Okay, going to start out with the Bloodline Scene War and the Tuatha De Danann and the Royal Scythians. The Royal Scythians are descendants of fallen angels and Nephilim with connection to Gog and Magog. So we're going to look up Revelations chapter 20, verse 7 through 10.
Hey, I have a question just as a spectator over here. Where
Yes.
where do these groups come from? The Scythians and the Tuatha De Danann people.
Well, they came from the steppe. So you're looking at modern day Ukraine and
Okay.
Russia. And then they went out and they went to Ireland.
Ah,
And
okay.
then they ended up in the Middle East.
Okay, thanks.
So I've been doing a lot of research. So Revelations chapter 20, verse 7 through 10. And this is how they are connected, the fallen angels and Nephilim, and with Gog and Magog. And when the 1,000 years are expired, Satan shall be loosed out of his prison, and shall go out to deceive the nations which are in the four corners of the earth, Gog and Magog, to gather them together to battle, the number of whom as the sand of the sea. And they went up on the breadth of the earth and compassed the camp of the saints about in the beloved city. And fire came down from God out of heaven and devoured them. And the devil that deceived them was cast in the lake of fire and brimstone, where the beast and the false prophet are, and shall be tormented day and night forever. And then next, John saw the great white throne. So the royal houses of the Middle East have connections to the bloodlines of the Antichrist. And that's the royal Scythians. They are connected to the bloodlines of the Antichrist. The lords of Anu migrated to the Emerald Isle after the flood.
Oh, that's Ireland.
Yeah, and so we see that that there's legends. And so what's interesting about the Irish is they didn't write down their legends, but eventually they just passed them down by word of mouth for some reason. And then eventually, I think it was like in the 70s, they started writing them down.
Yeah, that's interesting because we found a book online called The Book of Conquests by Jim Fitzpatrick, and it's the actual Irish lore written down in a really nice illustrated book. And it talks all about the different tribes, specifically the Tuatha De Danann, who were an ambitious tribe of warriors. So Jim Fitzpatrick did the artwork, and it's really cool if you want to take a look at it. Hopefully, you can find it online. But the cover shows a great warrior, and the copy inside, the legends that have been written inside are really pretty interesting.
Yeah, and so on that note, that is where the Elven race came from and the dragon court, and we're about to get into that. These ancient ruling lords of the Trans-European region race that started the Elven race.
The Tuatha De Danann.
Yes.
Okay.
And when they migrated to Ireland in 1000 BC, three kings of the dragon bloodlines came together in marriage. And these three kings are from Mesopotamia, Egypt, and the Amalekites. And to establish these king lords, the life of Egypt, the bloodlines of the Grell dragons, and all the realms of Esau and the Nephilim, and the jackal and the elites created the elven race of Europe.
It's amazing that if you like overlay the Lord of the Rings book and some of the lore that's come through, or even have just seen the movies, you can see the parallels of these
Yeah,
stories.
yeah, it's really interesting because I'm just reading this and taking this all in, and how that they're just talking about so much fantasy, but it just it comes right into Lord of the Rings. It's Lord of the
Mm-hmm.
Rings. I guess it was Tolkien,
Mm-hmm.
and he wrote Lord of the Rings, and we're seeing how he really came out and was telling truth about that this was all true. And he's from the elites because when and him and
C.S. Lewis?
C.S. Lewis are from the elites. And back then, they couldn't even get into these colleges unless you were like an elite bloodline.
Right. That's so interesting. And I think they were in college or maybe around the same time or the same age. So they were contemporaries, I
Yes.
think.
Yeah, they were out there. I thought they were actually friends,
Oh, even better.
I think.
It's all coming together.
So the Dragon Court was one of the most ancient of tribes of the world. They even predate the Sumerians.
Hmm.
And then we were talking about this yesterday, that Transylvania and Tartaria. So yeah, my sister brought up Tartaria.
Oh, interesting.
And so Tartaria is, you'll see it, it's like popping up everywhere. It's just like a really ancient civilization. And it existed in that Ukrainian Russian area.
Right. And it looks like that they predated the Sumerian texts by like 1,000 years.
Yeah. And there's also famous province of Transylvania. So we see how then that makes sense. Tartaria and Transylvania, that those places are the same area. And if you've ever been to Transylvania, it's just a very huge mountains. I guess that would be the Alps over there, but they're huge. And so Esau's sons, were from Amalekite, were from Nimrod, and so they were the Horites of the Nephilim. We see that in Genesis 36:11, 1 Chronicles 1:36. I mean, you can look those up. They basically just tell the names. And
Of Esau's sons, was that Amalek and Nimrod? Is that right?
Nimrod.
Oh, Nimrod.
Sure. Yeah.
Oh, I was close.
So Esau married Basmath, who was labeled a dragon queen.
Wow.
And the descendants of Esau were the Owl Queens and the Dragon Kings.
Owl Queens? I've never even heard of Owl Queens.
Yeah, me neither. So we're also going to look at the screech owl and how that Hebrew word is Lilith in Isaiah.
So the screech owl is associated with Lilith.
Yeah,
right?
Lilith.
Okay.
So whenever you look up the word screech owl, whenever they translated it, the word was Lilith, but when they didn't put that in the translation, they put screech owl.
So interesting.
So they were trying to describe, I guess, what Lilith was without being too scary about it. They didn't want to put, her name in there because... So Isaiah 34:14-17. So the reason why they didn't want to put her name in there, they kept a lot of these deities, little gods and angels out of the Bible, as King James didn't want people to worship these things. So they kept their names out. So you have to go to the actual literal translation to get the name of these deities. So 34, okay, here, 14-17. And the wild beasts of the desert shall also meet with the wild beasts of the island, and they shall cry to their fellow, and the screech owl also shall rest there, and find for herself a place of rest. So it's describing the screech owl as a her. There shall the great owl make her nest, and lay, and hatch, and gather under her shadow. There shall be vultures also be gathered, every one with her mate. Seek ye out of the book of the Lord and read. No one of these shall fail. None shall want her mate. From our mouth it hath commanded. In his spirit it hath gathered them. Okay, so with this word screech owl, we see that it's Lilith, which means night demon or night vampire. So we see that Lilith is attributed to being a night demon and a vampire. So this is one of the places that the Bible describes vampires. And so we can connect vampires to Sodom and Gomorrah. There's legends that that's where the vampires were first recorded. And so that would make sense that God destroyed it. So we see that Esau is described in the modern King James Version as an elf or part of the elfin race. And and these were also the fairy kings. The book of Joshua and Maccabees and the Access Bible link the Scythians to the Decapolis in Galilee in Jesus' times. So whenever we talk about the Decapolis and we watch The Chosen, we see that these are like these kingdoms of the Greeks. And the Access Bible is a very good Bible that I've been looking at, and it's got a lot of good stuff in there. And it's really good at trying to get to the root of the truth in the King James Version. And the Scythians, we see that they are from the Nephilim. They are part of Gog and Magog that are prophesied by Ezekiel to start World War III, invading Israel. And we see that in Ezekiel 38, 1 through 9. We'll go there. And the word of the Lord came unto me, saying, Son of man, set thy face against Gog, the land of Magog, the chief prince, and prophesy against him, and say, Thus saith the Lord, Behold, I am against thee, O Gog, the chief prince, and I will turn thee back and put hooks under your jaw, and I will bring thee forth, and thine army, horses, and horsemen, and all of them clothed with all sorts of armor, even a great company with bucklers and shields, and all of them handling swords. Persia, Ethiopia, Libya, with them all of them with shield and helmet. Gomer and all his bands, the house of the north quarters and all his bands, people of the north, right there, verse 6. And many people with thee. Be thou prepared and prepare for thyself, thou and all thy company that are assembled unto thee, and be thou a guard unto them. And after many days thou shalt be visited in the later years, thou shalt come into the land that is brought back from the sword, and is gathered out of my many people against the mountains of Israel, which have been always waste, but it is brought forth out of the nations, and they shall dwell safely, all of them. So they're gathering against the mountains of Israel. And thou shalt ascend and come like a storm. Thou shalt be like a cloud to cover the land, thou and all the bands, and many people with thee. So we see this right here. This is basically talking about Armageddon. We see that it's going to be so many people that it's going to be like the sands of the sea, like a cloud that covers the land. Okay, they will join Satan in the battle of Armageddon, Revelations 7 through 10. So basically, you can look that up, but that's basically the battle of Armageddon. And we just described it here in the Old Testament, and then Revelations 20 describes it in the New.
Right, Revelations 20, 7 through 10.
Yeah. And the Scythians from Black Sea, they intermarried with the Nephilim of Tartarus. So that's going to be, again, they all intermarried, and so they can mix their bloodlines, and they formed. So all these bloodlines mix, the fairy kings, the dragon court, and the other ones, the elfin ones. So they all intermarried because they were all descendants of the Nephilim. So they wanted to keep that bloodline strong. They exported the ring culture from Tartaria and Transylvania to Samaria, then to Ireland, and finally to the Middle East. Gardner calls them the Anunnaki overlords, the elven race, and the dragon court. They were known as the Tartarias, and they predated Sumerian tablets by 1,000 years, going back to 3500 BC. Tablets discovered in Transylvania, home of Vlad and Dracula of the Dragon Court.
Vlad the Impaler. You've heard about him.
So you were talking about 3500 BC. That's 1,000 years predated the Sumerian race, which is the oldest recorded writings, the Samaritans. So these predated that by 1,000 years. So Tartaria is a race, a civilization that existed that was completely just like taken out of the history books. But all that's coming back. They married the Nimrod bloodlines of Saddam.
Of Sodom.
So, yeah.
Like Sodom and Gomorrah, right?
Yeah. And that's where, we have legends that the vampires came from that area. So
that's interesting that you say the Nimrod bloodlines were found in Sodom. That kind of changes the whole story up, the Sodom and Gomorrah story. When Lot offered his daughters to the angels that were there to judge the people, and the men outside their door did not want his daughters, maybe they knew about these bloodlines and the fact that vampires, I don't know, where in the timeline that was, but I wonder if there's more to the story looking at it through this lens. Right. That'd be something interesting to investigate.
That maybe they didn't want the women, they wanted the men because the women could have been off limits or whatever. They didn't want to stir up. It just seems like there was a lot of bad stuff that ended up, at this place before God destroyed it. And so we also see the giants survive the flood in Greek mythology using boats. We see that with Og, and that there is actually stories, and that also that they could have survived the flood by going into the underworld.
So it could be like the giants saw Noah building the ark, and people were making fun of him and didn't buy into Noah's preaching and talking about the flood, but some of the giants were smart enough to think, okay, we need a backup plan. Let's build some giant boats just in case.
Yeah.
That's an interesting take.
They already had, I guess they kind of knew what was going to happen. They maybe had an idea of what was going to happen because, basically there wasn't a lot of boats at that time. So.
Right. Very interesting. I like it. And it would, explain why some of the giants, the men of renown, were still around after the flood. So I thought it might be fun just to read one paragraph from this book of conquest to give everyone an idea of what these warriors look like, the Tuatha De Danann. And it's just one little picture here that I'm reading of what used to be just oral tradition. So Nuada, the king of the Tuatha De Danann, turned his keen, pale eyes towards the green valleys of his ancestral homeland and gave thanks to his god, the sun. A giant among men, a hero among immortals, he stood against the rising sun. His flaming red hair was tipped with white, as was the custom of his race, and crowned by the sacred battle helmet of the Tuatha De Danann with its silver horns and engraven signs of rank and race.
Wow.
I'm going to just read a little bit more. Under a bodice of studded gold and bronze armor, he wore a robe, checked with reds, ochres, and brown, his red cloak strained to become one with the sea and sky. And thus with his people, Nuada came out of the sun, yet hidden by dark clouds. Thus their king led the people of the Tuatha De Danann back to the land of their ancestors, the land of Nemed the Great, bearing with him their sacred treasures, blazoned with the magical emblems of their stored wisdom and skills.
So it said they had white hair?
They had red hair, but tipped with white tips.
Oh, okay.
That was their custom. So anyway, that kind of paints a visual picture of what some of these people look like. Yeah, and obviously the Bible is our main source of content, but I thought it might be kind of interesting just to see what's come down through the millennia. Yes. Through oral tradition and then eventually written down.
So, this is just a deep dive into the royal Scythians and exactly, where they came from through Gary Wayne's book on this subject, one of his chapters, and just taking a deep dive, just going through it and pulling out the really good nuggets, the things that really stuck out to me. And just wanted to share that. Thank you for listening.
All right. Thanks.